Hello, welcome back to another one of these videos. Today we are going to be covering Snake. We'll go and get into the rules real quick. This one honestly is also better explained visually. The basic idea is you just need to have one kind of orthogonal group of cells where they kind of just make a one block wide snake going around. So you can see, for instance, this one does fit that description. We don't worry about diagonals for the case of this, but this one, for instance, you can see there's a cell here that's not a part of the snake, and the snake kind of has a weird part where it juts off in multiple different directions. That's not really allowed. As for this one, it kind of has a continuous loop in it, which is also not allowed. Another way to kind of think about this is just that all mines must have one or two orthogonal neighbors, is another way to think about it, and that they all must be in one group. Alright. We'll just go ahead and get into a puzzle, though. It might be easier to understand through just kind of going through an example. One thing to note is that a lot of snake logic is extremely similar to connected logic. So, for instance, we know there cannot be a mine here, because then we know from this one that all of these are non-mines, right? But there's then no way to connect up this one with the rest of the snake. Similarly, if we put a mine into either of these two squares, there also will not be a way to connect it up, so we know that these must all be non-mines. That 0 is finished, the 0 is also finished. We know from normal logic that these ones are like such, just from the differences between the regions of these two cells. And now we can always know that there's going to be a mine here. That mine needs to go out here to eventually connect up with this group down here. So we know that it has to kind of go through this choke point up here. And there's only one real way for it to do that, so we know all three of these are mines. Something else we can kind of consider, this is like a similar logic to connected or dual, is that if we put a mine here, then we know this one's finished and this one's finished as well. But we can see there isn't any way for it to go out orthogonally. So we know this is a non-mine, thus this is a mine. We can extend that out one. And it's kind of an interesting idea that we can look at here is we actually are going to be able to determine using almost a form of parity which one of these two cells will be the endpoint of our mine. And the basic idea is, or our snake. The basic idea is that each snake has two heads, or like one head, one tail, or whatever. Basically, that means there are going to be two mines that have only have one mine next to them. And we know those are both of the endpoints, right? Something else we can kind of notice is that if we were to color this grid in with checkerboard pattern like such, I'll just go ahead and shade some of these in to kind of get my point across. We can see that at each step of the snake, you're going to move either from a shaded cell to an unshaded cell, or from an unshaded cell to a shaded cell. And this kind of brings into mind the idea of like looking at the parity of a connection. For instance, if we assume this is the endpoint of the snake, right? Then we know that we have one, and we can just not consider these before I have them placed down, but then we would have to connect it with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells. So this is telling us that the number for this connection will always be odd if we assume this is the endpoint, right? Which is consistent with our remaining mine count. If we alternatively assume the endpoint is here, then we can see it's always going to be even, which is not consistent with our mine count. So this tells us that the remaining mine for this one group must be there. Something else we can kind of consider here is that we know for this one cell, the mine this one clue, the mine cannot be here. And the idea is just that it would cause both of these to be non-mines, and this would have to be a third kind of head to our snake, which isn't allowed. So we can go ahead and just mark this here. Something else we can consider, and this is all because we know where the two heads are, this one can't be a mine, because if it is, then it needs to like be part of a continuous snake. The only way to do that is with this, but this overloads the 5. So we can mark this down as such, get both of these. Something else we can note is that whenever we have a mine that has two mines orthogonally connected to it, we know that all mines orthogonal to that, or all empty cells orthogonal to that one, are not mines. So we know both of these are non-mines, for instance. We can then continue to extend these outwards. See, this 3 clues done. Extend that out one more time. One last thing we can kind of notice is that if we put a mine here, then our snake is completed, but we would still have 2 mines left just from our global mine count. So we know this is a non-mine. We can connect up these to finish up our snake. And there we go. Puzzle is solved. So that's kind of how snake looks. We're now going to move on to a harder snake puzzle. We'll start with, I don't know if I've seen this one. We'll go and go past it. I might have easily. Okay. So I guess the first thing we can kind of consider here is if there are any squares where there cannot be mines, just by the idea of what we're kind of looking at. One thing I'm immediately noticing is that if we put a mine here, for instance, this tells us now that this mine is the end point of our snake. We also then know it can't go over here because this finishes up the tube. It gives us a snake of length 5, so we know that these all are not mines. And I'm kind of wondering if from here we can make a parity argument or something similar. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep. The parity is off by 1. Therefore, we can argue that this one is not a mine and this one is not a mine, just because the kind of idea is the same between them. It just gives you basically a condition that cannot be fulfilled. So there we are. Now, I guess the next thing we can consider is if there's a mine here, if we run into any problems, which we very easily may, right? In that case, we know for this 2 that it must always be one mine in the center and another mine going out, just because if it weren't, if it was something like this, we would have 3 endpoints total. So we can consider this, for instance, should be the same either way, and we can see what the parity is. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the parity does actually work for this. Although it would have to theoretically go around the other end. It can't actually go upwards anyway because of, can't go around that way because of the 2. It's actually something interesting to note is that I don't actually think it's possible to have any mines in this region here. Because, like, let's assume that we do, for instance, right? Like, let's just put one there or whatever. And then we have to mark off all of these. But we can notice that the snake can't actually leave here because all of these are 2, but the choke points require at least 3 mines to get out. Right? And there aren't 14 cells in that region, so I think we can safely conclude that all of these innermost mines or cells are not mines. Yep, there we go. Something else we can now notice with this too is that this configuration of mines is not allowed because it does not form a proper snake, so this one must always be a mine. There we are. Okay. Now something I'm going to look into real quick is what happens if we have a mine up there. Now we can finish off with this one. We then know from this one here that regardless of where it is, since we know a head will either, or that we know a head can't be here, right? Because the only way for it to be there is if this one is able to kind of continue on going, but we see it can't, the head will always be somewhere around here. We can then safely say that we will never have a situation where, like, either of these 2 are heads, so we can then kind of see that whichever one's there must extend, like, downwards as such. So we either get this or this. Either way, that one is also a non-mine in this case. I'm not sure if this gives us a lot, though, because we then know that this group needs to go around down here, but beyond that, I don't know if we're seeing a lot. If we instead assume, well, I guess here's something we can know. Regardless of what we decide to do with the mines up here, we know this will always be filled in. The reason is just because there needs to be at least one mine up here from the difference, and if that mine is there, then it pushes outwards as well. So that's just something we can kind of do. In this case, though, we then get mines here, or non-mines here and here. We also know that if we put a mine here, then it would have to be a 3rd head, which isn't allowed, so we know this one's a non-mine. So, like, there we go. This is the kind of logic we could look for. So we can mark that real quick as well. Okay. What else does this tell us? It puts a mine right here. But it also, we can actually now think about it once again as the parity. And I'm going to break some of the rules for this too, just to make the counting easier. But theoretically, the way that, like, this kind of argument works is, regardless of whether we go here or, like, jut out like this, for instance, or whatever, the parity will remain the same because you're still basically ultimately going to this cell, which is going to be either shaded or unshaded, whatever you decide. Ultimately, by, like, jutting out, you're adding 2 cells of movement, so it keeps that the same. So anyway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so the parity works if this one is the endpoint, which means it should theoretically not work if this other one's the endpoint, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep, okay. So we then know that in the red case, we can also safely mark both of these as being mines. This one's a non-mine, whereas in the yellow case we can see that it must go out this way. Just go ahead and mark all of these back here. So now I think this actually gives us information on the yellow case about where the parity of this one must be, right? So let's first of all assume that if we assume it goes into here, then we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we know that in the red case, or whoops, in the yellow case, cannot go up into here, so this gives us that the other mine is over here, which tells us that the structure we're looking at is like this, right? So we know this one is always a non-mine. There we are. One other thing we can kind of consider is just if the parity even works for the yellow case, because this might be a route to just solving the puzzle right here, where we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yep, also works, huh? Oh well. One interesting thing to note, though, is that this is like the minimum route to get into the to get over here, right? Because we can't actually, if we want to extend outwards, we would actually end up with at least 14, which is above our mines remaining. So we can actually always say this one's a mine as well. One thing we can kind of note then is this implies in the yellow case that this one's not a mine. In the red case, though, we also know it still needs to go downwards and around here. If this one were a mine, then it would always have to kind of collect up there, and that would actually end the snake. So we know this one up here is just never a mine. There we are. Another thing we can kind of consider with a case of red is whether we have any room for moving around either, right? So now this one will be a mine, and then let's just say arbitrarily these two are the mines around this too. It doesn't really matter, but this is a way to make it go the quickest. So then we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. So what this is also telling us then is that in the red case, we also know it needs to go the minimum possible distance, right? So first of all, we then basically know that it will never hit any of these, so we can mark all of these ones as non-mines, and that it must go through the chokehold like such. Now this 2's finished, we can mark that, or rather we can finish off that 3 as well. We already know that one's a non-mine from what we talked about earlier, so it has to go through here. Can't go into the corner here, because if it does, then this 2 will be overloaded. Correct, I believe so. I'll double check that. I think we ruled this one out because of a parity argument with the case, right? Because it would have to look like this otherwise. And so what we then get is 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 5, which is not allowed. So we can then see that it must extend upwards like this, hit that, and we are now done. We have all of our mines placed, so we can go and finish off the puzzle. So there we go. We'll now go ahead and move on to some snake combination variants. These ones definitely are pretty interesting. I guess we can start with snake negation. This one will have checkerboard, checkerboard coloring, which is nice. So, okay. One thing we can first consider is what happens if there's a mine over here, maybe. Just because this might be an interesting idea to kind of look at. So then we get the snake must extend outwards like this, just in general. Right, and that's just kind of to get it connected up with the remaining 14, or I guess in that case 13. One other thing we can kind of notice now is since this group will always be either both filled in or not filled in, or to keep this 0 correct, we know it needs to extend this way, which also now tells us that neither of these are mines, and that one down there is not a mine either. So there we go. Actually, something we can always consider is we know that there must be at least one mine in this group here, but by our snake logic, we know that that mine must always be down here at least, and that also tells us for this 0 that there must be a mine over there, and that this one is a non-mine. So that's just something we always know. Now then, if we're looking at this yellow case, in order to continue the snake, it must go down there. And what this also tells us is, given that we have already 5, the maximum we can fit in here is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? So what that tells us is it actually can't really go beyond this point. And the other reason I'm asserting this is because if it goes down, for instance, it can't actually ever get in there either. So we know in the yellow case that none of these can be filled in. And additionally, that in order to finish up this one, it kind of has to go around like this, which kind of gives us a very strict path it must go down, where we already have 8, so then we get 9, 10, and then 11, 12 can only really fit up to like this radius away, so we can then see that none of these are filled in either. It's actually something interesting where we might already have a pretty good picture of what this looks like, but we'll go ahead and continue thinking. So now then, in the case where first of all, I believe that if we put, if we put a mine around here, then I don't actually know if this case is valid. I think that it's either both or neither up there, right? Because this would require it basically to end up there, which I don't think we have enough mines for, because we still know it needs to go through at least this kind of route. Can't go in there, so must go down, and yeah. Okay, there's enough room to actually fit that. So what we can do is go ahead and just note that if we're deciding that neither of these are filled in, then it's just like that. There we are. So what we'll instead consider is just, if it starts over here, then I think we still kind of run into the same style of deductions we got before, where then it needs to go out down here. It has less this time, so it can't ever go up there. So it needs to head down around here, through here, into here. And then what we kind of notice is that we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these, which means we can still fit 12 in there. It'll just be tighter. Okay. That's good to know. The last case I think to consider then is if both of these are filled in, right? So then we can know neither of these are filled in. We also know that neither of these are filled in either. You can also see that neither of these are filled in, and what this gives us is that this one here will never be filled in. No? That's interesting. Okay. We're going to go ahead and reset this puzzle. I must have made a mistake somewhere. So first of all, we know both these are filled in. Oh, I guess I forgot to consider the count where just none of those are filled in. Huh. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. One thing we can kind of consider, I guess, first of all, I'll look at the case where none of these are filled in, right? We'll actually just consider the one where it goes here. And this kind of leads to that deduction, just from the idea that none of these ones up here will be filled in, and thus this one also cannot be filled in. And then we know that this one must extend not over there. So actually something we can already know is also this. Yeah, we were at that point. This gives us an endpoint here, right? So first of all, by a parity argument, can it ever get down here? Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it can. Yeah, because it's going from one color to the same color. Okay, so it could end over there. An additional kind of thing to consider is what happens if it tries to go up here, right? Because something I was thinking is that a lot of these cases seem like they can't actually really go into here, so maybe it'd be worthwhile just to consider if it ever can go in here. It must go in like this. This finishes up the one clue, so we know neither of these are filled in. Additionally, we know that this one can't be filled in just by the parity argument from earlier if we know it needs to end on a black cell. So we can then go ahead and continue to kind of work this outwards. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, yeah, it definitely can make it up there. One interesting thing to kind of note is that it doesn't look like it can ever, and I'll check this, but I don't think it can go into this cell. Right, so first of all, let's just consider if it does, then it needs to head out like this, right? So for this one clue, we currently have it at a 2, so it needs to go back down to a 1. So then we know none of these ones are filled in. Correct. We also know that since we still need to get in 5 more cells, it can't go up here. So none of these are filled in. It needs to extend this way then, so both of those are filled in. Right? And then lastly, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 10, 11. And then the last one could be wherever. Okay, that's good to know. So this is one other possible snake we might be looking at. It's just this kind of structure, where it ends on one of those, right? Yeah, okay. So I think then what I'll do is I'll just real quick go ahead and re-put down the snakes we already kind of had pegged out for this route and kind of see if there's anything in common with some of our constructions. We know this one had to go there. If it's only these two, then we know it must go this way. This one feels a little bit derivative. That's okay. And lastly, if we consider the case where none of them are filled in, then what exactly do we get? Well, first of all, we could also have the case where this one over here is the head. So then it has to go down here. But in order to finish up this one, it must at least go there. If that one's head, then it has to go downwards like such. Do we actually have enough mines? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold on, so it would be 7, 8, 9, like 10, 11. Yeah, I don't think we actually have enough space for it, because it can't ever go up there either. Okay. So then what we know in the case where there are none, it must go down here. Which then, first of all, tells us this one is no longer filled in. Right? Yeah. Okay. So what else do we then get in this case? Whoops, we can fill in both of these. can this group ever get up here, is what I'm wondering, right? So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But that's the wrong parity, and it can't really... Yeah, it can't go in here either to adjust or anything. So I think what we can conclude from here is that regardless, this one up here can never be filled in. There we are. Okay, so now we know it needs to at least make it here, which means it needs to loop back out there, which is good to know. So I think that's telling us that it can't be red or blue, because both of those don't have enough space to go in there. So we can mark off all of these and actually see that it can just never go up into this region. There we are. Okay, in order to finish up that 1 and 0, we get this. Then we can know both of these are non-mines. There we are. Okay. Now, the one thing to consider is that this one must be a mine at least, because if this weren't, then it has to go here, but then we don't actually have enough room to finish it off. Right, like it goes here, we only have 3 cells, we need 8 or 6, so we know this one must always be a mine. We can actually see the same kind of argument this one isn't. And now we can kind of think real quick about this. We could have it go around here and not have a mine here at all. Right, this is I think just one case we'll consider. And the other one we'll consider is if it does go into here, then the maximum amount can go out here is 3 cells, so that means that this one is not filled in, and neither are any of these. And we can see kind of the commonality between these is implicitly, for the yellow case, we've already used all of our mines, so we know none of these ones on the bottom could be filled in. We then could just see none of these 3 can be filled in. Okay, and this now tells us the red case is invalid because it breaks this 0 clue, so we know it's, or the yellow case is invalid, so we know it is the red case. So there we are. Okay. Now then we have 3 mines left. We could do something with both of the mines here. It would have to look like this. Or if we consider neither of these mines are filled in, then we can see there's only 1 square worth of movement here that can really do. Or I guess it can do up to 2. That means there needs to be 1 up here, but if there's 1 here, there needs to be 2 here. So then it will be one of these 2. Can never be this one. In the yellow case, it's also not that one. We can then mark this. And we can also, well, actually, never mind. Something we can see here is just that this 1 clue has been finished the entire time. So there we are. Since this is a 0 clue, neither of these are filled in. 1 clue needs that. There we go. That was unfortunate, but that's okay. You know what, since I messed that one up a little bit, I will do 1 more. We'll just do a snake multiple, then it's not too bad. Okay. I don't know if I've seen this one. I don't recall it though, so whatever. First of all, 0 clue, done. 0 clue, also done. This 4 clue, just that's the only way to satisfy it, so it's also finished. We can mark that one real quick. Now, one thing we can kind of consider is some of the possibilities with a 6 clue. It needs 2 left. If the 2 are the black ones, like such, then we can first of all mark all these as non-mines and kind of wrap around the snake like this. We can see if parity-wise this works. I suspect it won't. Maybe it will, though. So we have 6 here, then we get, 7, 8, does not work. We need 11 total, so we can then see that neither of these are mines. So now then, let's consider some of the possibilities for the other remaining mine around this 6. If it's here, then we can mark both of these off, put that one up there, and then we kind of get this as our current snake, where it finishes off all of these. That one's also just marked like such. It kind of goes up there. Does this work parity-wise? It should. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, okay, it does. So that's one case. The next case we're going to look at is just what happens if we instead mark this one over here. Then it needs to head up. We know that the cell it's going to finish on will be black, because it's starting on gray, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yep, 10, 11, whatever. That finishes on a black one. We also additionally know there need to be at least 2 black ones around this 6, correct? Yeah, but also we know that one of them, it needs to at least go in this deep. So that's kind of telling us, since it can't finish on a gray, is that it actually needs to go in exactly this deep. Also tells us that specifically it goes like this, because this, if it goes in that deep, then it needs to head out like such, but then it needs to get exactly 2 left. The only way to do this is to go over there. So then it kind of heads up and it will loop around other way. The last case is if there's a blue one here, and we can mark off this. We also then know it needs to head up like that in order to just continue the snake. And we know, since it's starting on black, that is going to need to end on, I believe, another black. If I'm correct, we can count out real quick. 1, 2. Nope, and you stand on gray, I think. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, 11. Okay, so when you stand on a gray, let's consider if it can ever get down here. The answer is no, because if it does, then it needs to kind of head up through here, right? But this already overloads the 6. So all of this has kind of shown us, first of all, we also know the blue case, it cannot be there. And we also know it can't actually go down there, correct? So that means it needs at least this one. So what this kind of tells us is this one's not a mine, and this one up here is a mine, but we can also get that just from this 3 clue, which allows us to wrap it around here. Get rid of all these marks that aren't unnecessary anymore. We can finish off this 6 clue, go up here. This 6 clue is finished. We can go up here. This 6 clue is also finished, so we can wrap around the snake like this, and we only have 1 mine left to finish up the snake. There we go. We are finished. Alright, that one went a lot quicker and smoother than negation. That's okay. Next time, we will cover partition. This one's pretty fun, so I'd be excited for that, I guess. Anyway, peace.